Hi Genies, welcome to yet another episode of Access Genie. I'm your host Ancillar Nombewu, and on this week's episode of the podcast, I want to tell you 3 reasons I almost lost my business. I started my business in 2017. It's a public relations company called Ralinka Media. We offer public relations services as well as marketing services, and this year we started also offering business consulting services. And when I started, for the first few years, it was so difficult and I almost lost my business. Reason number 1 was the lack of processes. Had no process, guys. I didn't know if somebody wants to come and sign in as a client, how do we onboard them? And what do we look out for? What are red flags? If somebody wants us to create content, for example, for them, what's the process of creating that content? What do we do? Where do we store the content? How many changes or edits do we give the client? So many questions were left unanswered because we didn't have processes written down. And the lack of processes meant that we started delivering our services late sometimes, that everything was just on the go all the time. It felt like we're working 20 hours a day, and it was so frustrating. Yet we could have cut down on so many hours if we had the right processes in place. And it also meant for me as the founder that I was always training. Every time there's a new person, I tried to train. And every time I trained, I also trained differently, meaning that there wasn't uniformity within the company. One person will do this and the other person will do that. And it almost cost our business. So my advice to you is that when you start your business, put the processes down. Say, if this happens, what happens? How do we deal with problems or situations that arise in the business? How do we deal with different HR-related issues, for example? And most importantly for me, think about the journey that your customer takes within your business, right? If somebody is going to buy from you, what journey do they take? And create a process to ensure that you deliver to that customer no matter what. Because if you don't have processes, you'll learn the hard way, like me, by your business almost failing. Reason number 2, huge one, did not charge right. Undercharging and way over delivering were one of the core problems. Let me tell you, 6 years later, we're still dealing with some of those issues today because now some of them are difficult to change and difficult to enforce. So when you start your business, it's important to always price right. When I started, because I was new, I'll make excuses like, oh, I'm still new in the space, so I'll take whatever budget somebody has and just work with them just to have business. And that almost cost me my business because it meant that I couldn't get the right quality of employees or teams because there's just no budget. So you just work with what you got, right? Now you're working a lot with people who are apprentices, for example, to try and deliver for that client. And it is difficult to scale if your team isn't right. If you don't have the right people in the business, you can't scale. But if you don't have the money to scale or even money to get the right people, how do you scale? And how do you expand into different territories? So it's important to always price right. Sit down and think about, what are my expenses for me to deliver this service? And what things should I think about? Do we need data for the office? Do we need to travel to the client? Do we need new computers every time somebody joins in the company? Think about every single expense that you're going to incur servicing that client and charge for it. Rather, don't have business than have too much business that keeps you working, but you feel like you're not working for anything. And another thing in part and parcel of that pricing strategy for me, at the beginning, I just gave people or our clients way too much of a service. So I'll give you an example. Say a client is on retainer for me to create content for them, for example. And then a crisis arises with them because I'm in PR. They give me a call. Oh, Ancillar, there's this big problem. Could you please quickly help us? Jiggy, Now I'm writing a press release, but am I being paid for that press release? No. I'm getting media interviews. Are we being paid for those media interviews? No. So there's so many things I started doing for my clients because I want to see them win and I love them so much. But they were costing our business because those were hours we could be billing for that we're giving away for free. You can find other ways to ensure that your clients are loyal to you and they keep coming to you without costing your business. And lastly, number 3, the third reason my business almost failed is because of me. And I say that as an entrepreneur and the founder of the business, normally you're the business's biggest risk. And at the beginning of Relinka Media, oh my goodness, I was horrible because let me tell you, I like people who self-lead, whom I don't need to ask questions or follow up over and over, who are able to get a task and just run with it. And not everybody is like that. So one big mistake I made was when I would get people within the company who join as employees, I would expect all of them to lead themselves. And that's not how life works. You have to, as a leader, see how people need to be led differently. Somebody needs to be left alone to do their thing, and other people need encouragement and for you to check in and nurture them and hold their hand a little bit to help them finish their tasks. Now I came and I tried to get everybody to self-lead, and it meant that there wasn't work being done, and I became a terrible leader because I was always frustrated and I end up doing the work for myself. Because you're not moving too fast, you're not doing that too fast, not realizing that I'm actually letting my employees down by not leading well. So invest in yourself as a leader of your business to be able to lead the people to that goal that you and your business have. So I'm so glad that today I sit in a much more empowered space where I know myself, I know my weaknesses, and every single week we try and implement new processes to systemically help us build our businesses. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? Please press the subscribe button below and see you next time.